is total freedom.
U.S. media understands. U.S. media understands.
All right, so those were just some of the anti-Israel protests that took place outside the White House Correspondents' Dinner on Saturday night in Washington as violent protests continued at college campuses nationwide over the weekend. And there has been a lot of questions about who was actually funding these protests. It's now being reported that former Congressman Mondaire Jones, who is running to win back his seat in New York's 17th District, has gotten thousands of dollars in campaign donations from the Westchester People's Action Coalition and directly from the Soros family. Joining us now for more is member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the man that Mondaire Jones is trying to unseat in Congress, New York Congressman Mike Lawler. Congressman, great to have you back on. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
What'd you make of the protests that we saw over the weekend and what people witnessed at the Correspondents' Dinner on Saturday?
Well, I went to the Correspondents' Dinner and I walked right by it. And, you know, obviously what you see are these protests, these paid agitators, as we found out, that are showing up on college campuses. They're showing up outside of public events that the president is going to, protesting his fundraiser in Westchester County last week. This is reminiscent of 1968. I think the Democrats are going to have a big problem when they have their convention later this year. And you see the unrest that is happening, and it's part of the reason why they are trying so desperately to go after Netanyahu and why they are trying to placate these people, because they're concerned about the impact electorally.
So new this morning, and these are just some of the headlines that we saw over the weekend, but there are 7 battleground states that will ultimately decide who's president in November. We are now seeing protests in Arizona, in Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the Milwaukee Sentinel reporting on the arrests that happened over the weekend. In Georgia, major protests, the Philadelphia Inquirer with a huge piece about the arrest that took place at UPenn. And then in Michigan, those same people that voted uncommitted for Joe Biden in the Michigan primary have now joined with the protesters on several college campuses in Michigan. What impact does this have on Joe Biden and Democrats come November, about 6 months from today?
Look, in 2016, when Donald Trump won, he won by 80,000 votes in 3 states. When he lost in 2020, he lost by 40,000 votes in 3 states. So you're talking about an election that will be determined by a handful of votes in a handful of states. And I think this is why Democrats are freaking out with respect to these protests and why they are not cracking down on the rampant anti-Semitism. I mean, look at Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader from New York, the highest-ranking Jewish official in America. It's often said the most dangerous place in America is between Chuck Schumer and a microphone, and yet he has been utterly silent about these protests. Why? Because they're concerned about the electoral impact in Michigan, in Minnesota, what it will do both to Biden and to the Senate majority and the House majority.
Why isn't Chuck Schumer going to Columbia, which is in his backyard? Why isn't he visiting these universities and speaking out loudly against these anti-Israel protests? Because at this point, let's be honest, this is Chuck Schumer's legacy on the line. To your point, he's the highest elected Jewish American ever. In Washington. Yeah. Why isn't he doing more?
Because they're scared electorally. I mean, the fact is, they talk about protecting democracy. They talk about not having foreign governments interfere. And what did he do just a month ago? He called for regime change in Israel. Israel is under siege. They were attacked by a terrorist organization. They're trying to defend themselves. And Chuck Schumer's calling for regime change because he's worried about Michigan and Minnesota. I think it's pathetic. I think it's embarrassing and a disgrace. We have to crack down on anti-Semitism here in America. It's why I have the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, which will be coming up for a vote this week in the House. Jerry Nadler, another high-ranking Jewish official, opposed to it.
From New York as well.
From New York.
Doing nothing about this.
And by the way, his alma mater, Columbia.